The challenge of parenting teens is often misunderstood as a sign of failure or meaninglessness or crisis. And the reality is, it's challenging because it's a big deal. We're talking about a transfer of power. We're talking about our kids developing a sense of agency and a sense of identity that they're really trying to grow into and play with. And we're also trying to keep them safe and alive until they reach adulthood. So there's a lot that's shifting and changing. And parents tend to think of this in kind of an intellectual way. Oh, yeah, of course, I know hormones, other brain changes. But man, even the best of us, it can take you by surprise, because it's not like one day your teen announces that I've now moved into my adolescence. There are subtle surprises that start to come up. The differences of opinion, the snarkiness, the pushback, the teasing, the shutdown, the increased privacy. All of those things start to signal a new stage that a lot of us don't fully appreciate what then that means for us as parents. It is not simply a knowledge adjustment that's required. It's not about just putting more facts into your head. It truly is about changing the way you are conceptualizing how you position yourself in relation to your child. So there are 3 specific areas where you can really notice a change from little kid parenting mode to adolescent, teen, young adult parenting mode. The first is the zone of action, or where you tend to focus. So when our kids are little, our focus is totally on the kid. They cry, we see what's going on, we try to get the crying to stop. They are the target of observation. As our kids get older, we and our strengths and weaknesses, our baggage, our leftover healing that's remaining, all of that starts to come much more into play as our kids get older, because they start to separate from us in their adolescence. And there's an interesting thing that sets off for a lot of parents. It can still feel absolutely stark and like a bucket of cold water in the face. That moment you feel your teen pushing away. And you can know it intellectually, but it can still stir something really deep. And trying to make sense of all of those feelings and being able to get to a place where you can find the wisdom in what your feelings are trying to inform you, while also staying grounded and then mindfully deciding how you'd like to proceed. That's really the work that starts to become very, very necessary if it hasn't already. Oftentimes, toddlerhood can bring out some of this self-reflection. Adolescence is like a stage, it's like a chapter 2 of this. So you start to see what your reaction is to feeling rejected, to what your reaction is when you don't feel like you're in control or you feel like things are going to go wrong. All of those shadow sides start to come out. The next thing that changes is really our role. And it's easy when our kids are little to get into the role of fixing, facilitating, making things happen, making sure good, healthy development is happening. when we get to our kids' adolescence, it becomes really important to realize and check ourselves around this assumption that our good intentions automatically mean whatever we do or say is going to then positively help our teen or young adult. What becomes introduced at adolescence is the possibility that we have to make things worse for them. And this is very confusing for parents, because parents are like, well, wait a minute, we did all of that cooperative stuff. They were in the center of our attention, and we were there for all the extracurriculars, and they know how much we're on their side. So how is it that all of a sudden my reminding them, or my asking them this other thing, or why would that not then be seen as loving or helpful? Well, a lot of it is because the developmental task of what our kids are doing changes as they move into adolescence. And now they are very much in the business of getting good at taking care of their own business, or at least by exercising some increased sense of control. What's the challenge? Well, parents are a very lonely, we hold a lonely way station in society currently, where while everything is moving and progressing towards efficiency and 24/7 everything, we are the ones who are trying to teach our kids just because you can doesn't mean you should. We are the ones who are holding this idea of limits. And that is a lonely, lonely place to stand. That is one of the bigger pieces of what we do when our kids move into adolescence, is to kind of set the fence line for the zone where they can explore and grow and feel some sense of control and screw up a lot and recover and all of that. But we got to get clear on what the outer limits are for us, and not feel bad about having those limits and boundaries. Our kids, because we taught them from when they were very little about the fact that they have things called feelings, and we help them give words to this internal sensation that they have, they're very precocious. They're very able to articulate their feelings and why your limit may not seem like the fair thing. And don't you realize that while you're putting the limit, they need to experience freedom and learn to make their own choices. And that level of verbal precociousness around emotions can leave parents feeling a little paralyzed, because parents can start to feel like, well, geez, they're doing such a good job articulating what's going on for them, that maybe I do need to compromise and meet them halfway. And sure, meeting them halfway is fine, but make no mistake, verbal precociousness and the ability to articulate what's happening in one's internal life is a very separate thing from impulse control. So yes, we want to really encourage and honor and reinforce when our kids are good at articulating their wants and needs and their feelings about it and their arguments about it. And we can also be very clear that their brain doesn't fully finish developing until their mid to late 20s. So there are just going to be some outer limits that we as parents hold. It just is. Example, tech limits. So it's very common for teens to say, well, I need to know how to be able to control tech limits. So, okay, this doesn't mean then the parent says, okay, then do whatever you want. A middle path can be, okay, we can explore extending a tech limit if the next day you have no problems getting up for school, your homework's all caught up, your grades are good, you're participating in all your extracurriculars. then we can talk about expanding it. The day that you have a hard time getting out of bed because you didn't get enough sleep or whatever, then we have to re-examine the tech issue. So don't ever feel like you have to relinquish the limit just because your kids are really verbally precocious and can articulate so well the reasons why their freedom would be a good idea. From their vantage point, it makes a lot of sense. And we can still hold the limits we need to hold. This puts parents in a much more unpopular role than they were in for the first half of their kids' lives. So, you and your child could have been best buddies for the first half. Doesn't mean that's how it's going to go for the second half. There is always a shift and a recalibration that needs to happen. So so this brings me to the third thing. Not only does the role change, and where you focus changes, but you also start to recalibrate your sense of what you have control over. You will do much better if you can, from the outset, agree that you cannot control your teen's thoughts or your teen's feelings. They are allowed to have the thoughts and feelings they have. Because frankly, all human beings have thoughts and feelings that are automatic. There are thoughts. We don't intend to think a thought and then think it, or we don't intend to feel a feeling and then feel it. These things happen in response to the stimuli around us. Where we have room to work with our teens is around the behaviors they engage in and the decisions they make as a result of those thoughts and feelings. If you can keep that distinction clear, that's going to help. The other piece that is going to help you be clear is that we're not trying to control their behavior directly. What you are going to do is make sure you control what is in your control, your resources, money, time, energy. Kids will often say to parents, if you feel like I'm not appreciative enough, then do less. And they're not wrong. Don't keep putting forth out and then think, well, I just need to keep lecturing my kid to be grateful and then they'll eventually be grateful. They will learn gratitude more readily if you can just stay in a open, neutral place of learning with them, which is very hard to do when you're feeling resentful. And resentment tends to build when we give more than we're equipped or wanting to give. Giving less for a lot of parents feels wrong. Almost like, well, if I have it to give, then I should. So it's an interesting parallel lesson that parents are learning along with their teens of just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you can make your teen's life easier doesn't mean you should carry everything for them. Because developmentally, what they are learning to do is learning what it takes to carry the weight of their existence. The more we can recalibrate and be clear about what we can control, the fewer power struggles we get into. So because of these shifts, these are just 3 concrete areas that point to and why this is so hard. It's not you, it's not your teen, it is the stage and the task at hand. And for a lot of parents of teens, this is a kick in the teeth, frankly, because a lot of us put in a ton of work in the beginning, And the first half, thinking about our own childhoods and learning from that, and many of us doing a lot of therapy and healing for ourselves, that we come in really thinking that if we put in all this work for the first half, the second half will be easier. I will tell you this now. We put the work in for the first half because the second half is as bumpy as it is. It is the foundation. Those are the building blocks that then serve to build out what will be the full relationship you have with your teen/young adult as they come into their full sense of self. The relationship we have prior to the development of their full sense of identity is really it's a very special window. They are so dependent on us still. We have so much control that we underestimate. And it becomes very stark when kids hit adolescence. When all of a sudden your kid looks at you, who's taller than you, and says, well, I'm not getting out of bed. That'll show you real quickly what you do and don't have control over. So, one thing that makes it hard for parents to be present for their kids and to have access to the wherewithal they need to respond to all the different curveballs their kids throw. The one thing that just makes that harder to do is if parents are in a place of self-loathing, self-criticism, self-paralysis, or in a kind of catastrophic place with regard to either thinking, oh, my teen is hopeless or I'm hopeless. The challenge is not catastrophe. The challenge is just the challenge. And it turns out that our kids need a lot of support from us around how crappy it feels to have to grow up. For a lot of us Gen X or Zennials, that's a weird one for us because that's how a lot of us really kind of survived and thrived, was sort of imagining how we would be able to grow up and be free, for instance. So when we see our kids struggling and just not being able to as robustly engage in things they don't necessarily want to do, it can stir a lot of judgment in us. That is the exact point. They are needing the most patience from us. But understand, I don't mean patience equals let them off the hook. What I mean is patience in being able to validate that, yeah, this sucks. Yeah, it sucks to have to be in school learning things that don't seem directly relevant to anything in your everyday life when there are so many more things that are interesting and whatnot. Yes, it sucks. It sucks to have to start to think about how you will subsidize your own existence. That is also unpleasant to think about. We can validate those things. Absolutely. We can validate that till the cows come home and lose nothing. Because the other part of that is, yes, and we know you can do it. And we can't wait till you see the cool things that come with accomplishing these greater things. So we need to have that long vision in mind and not immediately assume at the first sight of our kids' difficulty engaging in things that aren't gratifying. That isn't a catastrophe. That is just the learning edge for our kids, and we just need to help them through it. I don't think it helps to come to any declarations about, oh, this generation's lost or what. No, they are where they are, so let's just help them get to where they need to go. We do that best by offering them validation, yes. Even on your worst day, when you're most confused and most miserable with all the things that life involves, you still deserve to exist and be here. No one else is as powerfully equipped to deliver that message than parents. Yeah, so no, there's nothing easy about this. Punchline, don't be alone. Don't be alone in this endeavor of parenting your teen or young adult. Find ways to have more honest conversations with your friends about what's going on. We often don't talk to each other about these things a lot because we are trying to protect our kids' privacy and whatever sense of shame or guilt we may have residually under there. But understand, none of us are immune from the challenge that is adolescence if we're parenting. There's just no way around it. It is a challenge. It requires a series of shifts from parents that often requires personal growth and more effort put forth. That is internal. If you're needing help, I'm here. Seek out a free 30-minute consult. So this is the time to really slow down, catch your breath, get clear. This isn't just about checking the boxes. There's nothing quick and easy about this. And the beautiful things that can come from it are pretty amazing. And, there's just nothing like living the experience. Okay, what do I do with a kid that is addicted to screens? That is such a broad question. I guess it depends on how you're defining addicted to screens. So is this a kid who every chance he gets, he wants to be on the screen? Is there a lot of emotion dysregulation that happens? How is functioning with schools, and other relationships, other things. Doctors, so how to work when your teenager makes boundaries just to have their way. So I'm guessing if they say things like, well, I'm not going to go, or I don't want to talk right now. Is that what you mean? Your teen can make boundaries around what they want to do. I mean, understand, you can still set, though, expectations around what is involved in being part of the family. So you can find a way to compromise and say, okay, you don't have to go out every night with us, but we expect you to go out 2 nights for example, like we expect you to go at least out with us to dinner 2 nights a month, for example. And, I think also some conversations around what it means to invest time in relationships. My guess is there are probably a lot of asks that your teen is making of you still, while holding a lot of boundaries because they don't want to do certain things, and you might want to reevaluate some of what you are doing to see if are there places you're overfunctioning, perhaps. So that's another place to consider. These topics are really hard to just talk about broadly because the specifics matter so much. Let me give you an example. A parent wrote me and said, my son has a tech addiction. Has verbal outbursts, can't control himself. So I asked her to expand a little bit more. And what came out is that teen was actually doing really good in school, very active in sports, really active with friends. And the time that so she was seeing this as an issue because he would become incredibly emotionally dysregulated to the point of, punching a wall, making a hole in the wall around tech. So she was equating that as a tech addiction issue. Well, what came out was that she says, well, it's interesting. It happens to only come out around when we put things in relation to his PlayStation, specifically that he has to share. She offered as a caveat, though, that the PlayStation is technically his. Now, to me, this is a good example of, now, it's really easy at first pass to look at it as simply a tech issue. But at second pass, what I see is a kid who's doing everything his parents are asking him to do, and he's got this one thing that matters to him, and he's got to share it. Now, I'm not saying he should not have to share it. Okay, if he has to share it, he has to share it. But let us understand his emotional outburst around the difficulty staying regulated, around how unfair it feels to have to share something that he feels is his, especially when he does so much that he doesn't want to do. Just being able to validate that, to say, we get it. We get why this is aggravating to you, and we appreciate it, and you have to do this. If you can hold the both and, it opens a lot more space for you. Let your kids have the miserable feelings they have about whatever it is that you're expecting them to do. That's okay. It's just a feeling. It'll pass. A lot of times we can get into this, well, what about their attitude? Please. They're trying to hold their attitude together. We are the ones least likely to get their good attitude. Doesn't mean we should take verbal abuse from them, but let's be realistic. Let's be realistic about this. Teens are kids who are realizing they got to grow up, right? Like, to put it in a really basic way. And that there are really fun things about it, and there are some really crappy things about it too. How do you balance all of that and keep growing and doing the things you need to do? That's the challenge. This isn't going to be easy. So give yourself, give your teen or young adult some grace. Because it turns out this transfer of power is not easy. It is not smooth. Throw love into the mix, and it's even more complicated. All right, guys, so don't be alone with any of these things. I'll check in with you later in the week. Feel free to DM me with any questions, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. All right.